In this video, we'll walk you through the steps that you can take in our MDR console to improve your security posture by focusing on the highest priority exposures and risks. The Vulnerability Summary dashboard will be our starting point. This dashboard gives you a snapshot of the current vulnerabilities, exposures, and their trends in your environments, and gives you the ability to drill down to understand what actions result in the most impact. The widgets allow you to hover over interesting portions of the charts to see more detail, and you can click on them or on the Investigate button to navigate to the Exposures interface with pre-configured filters based on where you click. The view is currently configured to show all exposures. Exposures include all individual vulnerabilities and insecure configurations that AlertLogic has detected. They may also be findings collected from third-party systems, such as AWS IAM Access Analyzer, and configuration problems that restrict AlertLogic's visibility into your systems. This view can be useful in understanding which assets are affected by a specific exposure and determining which exposures require patching and which can be remediated with a configuration change. If we switch over to the Remediations View, the individual exposures are collated together into collections that are more orientated to actions you can take. This view is useful in prioritization and planning tasks that will materially impact your security posture. Performing a single remediation action is often able to correct many exposures. For example, a single patch may fix many vulnerabilities, or a common configuration change may be recommended across many assets. The view is currently sorted based on the AlertLogic Proprietary Risk Score, the Threat Risk Index, or TRI. The TRI provides a more complete view on severity and is generated based on a number of factors, including the industry standard Common Vulnerability Scoring System, the location of the asset within your network, the exploitability of the vulnerability, and the time since the last scan. We can also sort the list by the total number of assets that will be affected by the remediation, so we can determine which single actions will apply to the highest number of assets. Of course, both the severity of the remediation and the number of assets are critical in determining the best course of action. If we look at this Use ASG to add resilience to EC2 example, we can see it affects a large number of assets, but is a low severity vulnerability. If there is work being done on these assets, or a DevOps team is updating the orchestration for build of these workloads, this may be worth raising with the appropriate teams. Let's return to the Sort by TRI view. If we click View on Review the IAM Access Analyzer findings for this account, you can see a quick list of the exposures that fall under this remediation. Since this is a configuration exposure, there may be multiple actions required to remediate the risk, though often these can be resolved using automation or policy updates within the cloud provider and are bundled together for that reason. If we fully open the remediation, we'll see a list of all exposures, affected assets, user accounts in this case, and the recorded evidence. Expanding a specific exposure, we can view more details, including a description of the impact and the resolution for this one exposure. If we click on Asset, you'll see which exposures relate to that specific asset. The same applies to evidence. You'll only see assets and exposures that apply for that evidence. Once you've performed the remediations, select the assets involved and you can close the remediation. If it is believed there is no impact to your environment or you have compensating controls in place, you can also dispose of the remediation. When disposing, you will be asked if the remediation is considered an acceptable risk, a false positive, or if you have compensating controls in place. And you will be able to specify a time period to wait before the remediation is displayed again, at intervals between 1 day and forever. This can be useful to manage workload. Let's return to the Exposures interface and look at a remediation that involves a software vulnerability. You can see a quick list of the exposures that fall under this remediation. Applying the recommended patch to only 2 assets will correct 162 exposures. Although this is a small number of assets, the number of exposures is large, and the assets are internet-facing too. As with the previous example, we can explore the details for each exposure, affected asset, and the evidence that caused the exposure to be raised in the first place, as well as mark the remediations concluded or disposed for specific assets. Back in the Exposures view again, you can further refine the view using the various filters on the left, including severity and for individual deployments you have set up in the Alert Logic console. Finally, let's walk through the Vulnerability Summary dashboard to further understand each widget. You can set a date range for the dashboard and have a variety of visualizations to use. Open Vulnerability Instance Count and Open CVE Count shows the total individual vulnerabilities and configuration exposures live in your environments. Open Security Remediations Count shows the activities Alert Logic has consolidated vulnerabilities and configuration exposures into for you to take action on. Vulnerability Trend by Severity shows if the overall number of vulnerabilities is trending up or down. Open Vulnerability Instances shows the proportion of vulnerability severity across all your systems. Vulnerabilities by Deployment allows you to quickly see which of your configured deployments requires the most urgent attention. Top Remediations by Impacted Assets gives you an ordered list of remediations which will have the most impact on your security posture if the recommendations are carried out. Most seen CVEs can also help identify which types of vulnerabilities should be investigated as a priority. Most Vulnerable Hosts is a fantastic way of understanding which of your systems is most at risk. You may choose to target this host for an aggressive patching and configuration assessment. Investigating and remediating exposures is an iterative process that is critical to minimize the likelihood of successful attack. Alert Logic's teams work to ensure that you have the information at your fingertips to enable efficient and accurate activities for you and your teams. If you would like to learn more or talk to one of our security experts, please contact us via alertlogic.com.